What is going on, everybody? How are you all doing out there? I hope this video is finding you well. Welcome back to Get Right On In. My name is Andrew, for those of you who do not know, and today I am going to be doing another little writerly advice type video, especially for those of you who have written the first draft of a book. Whether it is your first book or not, I do hear a lot of people asking about what to do after the first draft of the manuscript has been written, so I put together a little list of some do's and don'ts for you to consider before you move on into the editing stage. So now with all of that out of the way, without further ado, let's get right on in. Alright, before we get too started here, I also just wanted to remind you all that everybody works differently, and so what I am suggesting for you here might not work as well for you as it does for me, so just wanted to put that out there before we get too involved in this today. But first up, what you should do is give yourself some time between drafts. For me, personally, I say to wait for at least a solid 3 to 6 months before you go back and start getting too heavy on the edits. If there are things that you remember from the initial writing stages that you would already like to go back and add or change up just because you've made those notes during the writing process, of course, feel free to do so. And of course, there's also nothing wrong with giving it a once over once you have finished it and making any kind of immediate changes that you notice. However, before you get too involved in thinking that it's perfect after a once over as soon as you finish the first draft, come back in a little while and we'll talk about why more in a minute. The first thing that you should not do is expect for an editor to fix it for you. Once you do get it all cleaned up and ready to go off to the editor, don't expect it to come back as some gleaming, glistening, polished manuscript that's just ready to go for publication. That is not the editor's job at all. The editor is simply there to point out areas that need improvement. It is not their job to make those improvements for you. That job lies alone within you, the author. However, you do know the story better than anybody else, so you do have the right to disagree with what the editor is saying, but just make sure that if you are disagreeing with something, it is because you believe it is for the best part of the story and not just because you are not open to criticism. Regardless of where you are at in your writing journey, you should always consider reading some more grammar books or taking some more lessons or doing something to just improve and hone in on your craft. There are plenty of books on writing, plenty of classes on self-editing, there's plenty of blogs and videos and podcasts and all sorts of content creators putting out plenty of stuff that is waiting for you to consume it, so go out and consume it. It is always a good idea to keep in mind that you should always be growing as a writer. Personally, I don't ever want to feel like I know it all or that I don't have any room for growth. That is personally just a mentality that I am aiming to keep throughout the duration of my career. I have also just recently given LinkedIn Learning a go, and as of this recording, I am just on my initial 1-month trial just to see how I feel about it. But so far from where I'm sitting, I actually think that it's pretty worth it for the $240 a year price tag for all of the options that you have on learning so many different things. So while you are sitting over there waiting for your manuscript to marinate, educate yourself. It will help you out so much when you go in for that first thorough edit. However, while you're sitting there waiting for your manuscript to marinate, do not try to sell it off to a publisher or an agent or anybody in between. And when I say this, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you should never do that, because that's certainly counterproductive to writing a book. But you should really never do that when it's only in the first draft stages. Even if you somehow manage to nail your pitch and get the editor or the agent or the publisher or anybody interested, as soon as they read over your first draft and realize that it's only a first draft, it is not going to take them very long at all to put a kibosh on the assignment. And that could also hinder any future chances you might have with them. Everybody in the publishing industry is getting inundated with thousands of emails per day. Simply put, they do not have time for unfinished work. And yes, it is still considered unfinished once it's in the first draft stages, because simply finishing a book does not automatically mean that the book is finished. The real work is about to begin. Remember remember. After you do give yourself a little bit of time away from your manuscript, once you come back to it, it's really important to do your best to read your own manuscript as a reader. When you read your own work, just the truth of the matter is you are so much more connected to it than anybody else. You were there from conception to completion. It birthed in your mind and you brought it to life. You now understand why authors call their books their babies. But that's exactly why it is so hard to edit your own work. After some space from it, just be real with yourself when you read it back. Do you only like it because it was yours? Would this be a book that you would buy off of the shelf if it wasn't? It's really great if you do love your work just as much as you did on the first draft stages. But anywhere that you are finding that you aren't necessarily too happy, you should definitely pay attention to all of that, because truth be told, denial's only gonna get you so far. Roll with it as you go. Make the necessary changes. Put in the work. It will be worth it in the end. But since you are over here editing your own work, don't be opposed to critique or criticism. Beta readers and critique partners are vital to your success. If somebody has a problem with something or points out an area of improvement that you should consider, don't get defensive. Comments from those types of readers are generally very constructive, and really they're meant to make sure that you are producing the best work possible. On the flip side, as I said earlier, you do know your story best. So it is not that you have to take every recommendation or every thought that's given to you by every person. It's just important to gauge and understand where potential readers might get lost or get confused or lose interest just completely, and you really don't want that at all. Yours can just simply not be the only opinion that goes into this book, or especially if you choose to self-publish, you will very quickly find that the general readerscape is going to call you on all of your mistakes. And we've all just seen Miss Lauren Huff get crazy on us all recently, so if you cannot handle negative reviews, just consider that before you even put the book out in the first place. And I'm gonna lay some tough advice here on you as well, because a lot of first-time writers really just do not understand how much work comes into the book after the first draft comes out. So do always keep it in your mind that the first draft is actually the easiest part of writing a book. And if this is your first time writing a book, that is going to be the hardest pill to swallow. Anyone who has ever wanted to write a book knows how daunting the idea even is. And anyone who has ever completed a first draft of a book has to go through this realization where they're like, oh man, that was the easy part. However, don't let that stop you from trying anyway. I'm about to lay down some of the most cliche advice out there. I hate myself for doing it, but it is what it is. I'm just gonna put it out there, so here it goes. When it comes to writing, persistence pays off. Even if it takes you years to get your book polished up and ready to go, do not ever give up. I have been open about various aspects of my own journey throughout my writing life, and I personally have just stood in my own way too many times. You're only hurting yourself by stopping before you even try, or by losing your drive in the middle and just assuming that it's not going to be worth it in the end. The only way you can ensure your own failure is to quit. The future is uncertain for everybody, and it is a very cutthroat world out there in publication. Are the chances against you for success? Depending on what your definition of the word is, probably. But does that mean that you shouldn't even try? Absolutely not. So take a breath, screw your head on straight, and then go get right on into polishing your manuscript. And there we have it, folks. Some do's and don'ts for you to consider after you have finished up your first draft of a manuscript. Especially for some of you seasoned writers out there, what are some of your suggestions for people to do after they have finished a manuscript? Are you currently sitting on your first book ever? Maybe feeling a little bit lost? Let me know all about it down in the comments, because I am here for you as well as the rest of the writing community, because we are all in this together. Thank you all so much for watching this video today. If you enjoyed it, I would love it if you gave it a little thumbs up, as well as potentially considered pressing on that little subscribe button to join me on Tuesdays and Thursdays and sometimes on Sundays for bookish and writerly and entertainment-y-esque content just like this. In the meantime, I hope you all have a day just as beautiful as you, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!